Hey everybody, it's Fabrizio Ayala, comic book creator, and today I want to do a review of George Bridgman. So these George Bridgman books you'll see on the top 10 list of a bunch of comic book creators, artists, and illustrators all over the place. George Bridgman was a really famous anatomy instructor, so a lot of his information is in these books. You'll recognize when somebody has been studying Bridgman because you can't help but see the style. So I just want to talk really quickly about my experience with the book, the stuff that I pulled from it that I think is useful, and the stuff that I don't think the book does exceptionally well, that has actually done better in some other books. So the first thing to keep in mind whenever you get into the book is, unfortunately, the drawings are ugly. And I don't mean they're not well done. I mean, the reproductions, they just look bad. They look like photocopies, Xeroxes, been printed 1,000 times. So because of that, sometimes it is a little difficult to see what's going on. And I'll show you a spot where it's really difficult to see the intention of muscle versus bone versus tendon or something like that. So that is something to keep in mind. Usually you can see what's going on. In the past, I have another copy of this where I actually, with a pen, went over some of the original drawings. And then sometimes with a colored pencil, I'll even go in and color the muscle. That way you can definitely tell the difference between the muscle, the bone, and the intended illustration. So the thing that he is really good at is simplifying the form, but not as much as cylinders. So, when you're first starting out, everything is a cylinder, and then you use that cylinder body essentially to layer detail on top of. So I think Bridgman is sort of like that one step above, where he's still simplifying the form into muscle groups and bone forms, not even individual bones sometimes. Then he'll construct how those shapes and groups work together, hence human machine, and you'll see what I mean here in a minute. I put a bookmark on this page just because when you look at this, you can't help but see comic book hands. I mean, these are just pure stock comic book hands. And that's because a lot of comic book artists use this for reference. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just you'll see it right away whenever you're going through this book. Things will pop out at you that you've seen 1,000 times before in comics. So he does get a little bit into sort of the academic side of it. So he'll put the actual muscles. He'll put the bones. Again, it's difficult to read sometimes, but there is some text here to help you out with that. But there are some scenarios where even that doesn't help. This is a good example of where he simplifies the form. So he takes the arm, he simplifies both bones in the forearm into one big shape, and then he simplifies all the small muscles into big shapes on top of that bone. And this is really useful, very, very useful when you're drawing, because you don't necessarily want to draw every single muscle. You want to know where they're at, you want to know where they connect and where they attach, the origins and the insertions, but how they interact with the bone is actually more important than you would think, because if not, your arms will feel Gumby-like and malleable. This is a really good example of him sort of taking a section, a muscle, and then he'll create like a machine, so to speak, for it. But if you look at this, it's very difficult to see what's going on. I think that's a muscle right there, but you have some text over here, but there are scenarios where I just think the reproductions are just so bad that it's very difficult to see what is actually going on and what his intent is. That happens quite a bit. Unfortunately, it's not his fault, but that is something to keep in mind. So here is an example, again, of him simplifying the form. You have like really nice plane changes, between the pecs and the ribs and then the abs. So that is really nice. You'll see this a lot. Again, this isn't accurate in any way, but it'll give you a sense of groups of muscles. And the last part that I show, again, this is all over the place, but this is some of the highlights, where he'll take the knee, which is a really complex thing to do, and he will make a little machine out of it, just so you really understand the concept behind it. And once you understand that, using these dowels and these bands, and once you learn the anatomy, it really kind of coalesces into understanding the human form. So That's my review of The Human Machine by George Bridgemen. Definitely put it in your library, absolutely. Just don't expect it to answer every question. It's a real specific sort of anatomy, a real specific kind of approach. There are other anatomy books that I'll go over, and they will cover other topics. I think ultimately, if you want to learn anatomy, it's not one book, it's probably 5 or 10 books. But those 5 or 10 books excel at one thing in particular, and between all of them, you really have a good sense of form. Thanks a lot. Any questions, let me know, like, and subscribe.